Hey everyone, my name is Ati and today we are going to learn how to paint a rose using watercolors. First, I'm creating the base layer using red watercolor mixed with water. The lightest areas, like some of the edges of the petals and the highlights, will stay in this color. In this stage, I use a big brush. If you want to paint this as an exercise, I recommend that you pause the video in every step, watch and listen to the explanation, and then do it yourself. After all the rose is covered with color, I let it dry completely. I started painting the left side of the rose, but it's better to start on the right side if you are left-handed, or the left side if you are right-handed. I'm actually right-handed, so when I used my left hand in this video, I automatically started on the left side, even though it would have been better if I started on the right side. I'm dividing now the general shape into sections, creating the petals. I'm using more saturated colors than in the first layer, especially in the shadows. When it gets away from the shadow, I use a little more water to create a lighter color. When the petals are on top of each other, it's often darker when it's closest to the petal above. You can use the side of the brush to cover a wider area. When using watercolors, I think that working in layers is a very suitable technique, because when mixing them with water, they become transparent. You can go over and over the same place, while the color underneath can still be somewhat visible. I think that by using a very opaque color right away, it can look flat. So you can build up the color with layers, starting from diluted color to opaque color. I mark to myself where some of the dark places will be, which are the places where the petals are close to each other. There are different reds in my watercolor pack, which I find very useful to create realistic light and shadow. If you use only one type of red, then you'll have less options to create light and shadow. Because when you mix red with water, you will get pink. And in order to make this red darker, you will have to mix it with another color. So the result won't be so red. I use the different reds to create levels of light and shadow, while keeping the rose feeling red. So I have the pink as the highlights, the reds as the middle tone, and for the darkest areas, a mixture of the dark red with warm purple, a purple that has more red than blue in it, and a little bit of brown that is close to red. If you don't want the color to leak from one wet area to another, wait until it dries completely or leave a thin, dry line between them. Roses' petals tend to get more pointy the further away they get from the center. The edges of petals that are far away from the center can roll in a way that makes them less exposed to light. So these petals tend to be darker on the edges. I use a lighter red on this petal because it looks lighter to me than the rest side of the rose. Aside from it, the petals of the side of the rose will be darker than the petals above them. I look at the rose and try to copy what I see. It's important to spend more time looking at what you are painting rather than your own painting. Try to ask yourself questions about what you see. For example, what are the shapes that I'm seeing? Where is the darkest part of this petal? Is this petal darker or lighter compared to the other petals? Every petal should have light and shadow, and every petal can be different in shape or color from the rest of the petals. To create details, like fine lines, with the brush, dip only the pointy peak of the brush in the color. Hold your brush so it will be vertical to the paper. It has to be close to 90 degrees. It takes time to get used to painting with a brush, but the more you do, it will feel as natural as by drawing with pencil. Also, knowing how much water to add to your color can be tricky at first. If you're not sure, you can always try the color on a draft paper before applying the color to your own painting. To get the hang of watercolor, or anything else, it will take practice. Watercolor is one of the most versatile art medias. There are so many ways and techniques to use it. I hope to cover as many as possible in my YouTube tutorials. Even though every rose has the characteristics of roses, every rose is different. Unlike man-made objects that come out from factories and are identical to each other, natural objects like trees, leaves, rocks, flowers, etc. aren't copies. Man-made objects are most of the time symmetrical. If you put a line in the middle of an object, and one side is the exact reflection of the other side, then it's called symmetry, which is not the case of this rose or any other natural objects. So when painting natural things, you don't have to worry too much about being perfectly accurate. It can still look like a rose even if it's slightly different from the rose that you see. If you wish to get a more realistic painting, it's better not to surround anything with a strong line, a contour, because objects don't have lines around them. So even if I make the edges darker, it's not going to surround everything. In order to create more smooth transitions, don't cover all the layer below with darker color, just part of it. You can add water beside the new layer of opaque color. It can create a gradient effect. Some of the color will flow to the wet area. Also, while an area is still wet, you can add more color or darker color on one side of it. The petals are surrounding the center in a circle. It's better if the brush strokes follow the direction of what you are painting. It's important not to cover the areas that are going to remain in the pink color. I'm painting around them. You can't add lighter colors above darker colors in watercolors, which is another reason why it's often better to build up the color slowly. You can't really delete watercolor, so it's better to plan ahead what are you going to do. You can go over watercolors with other medias like acrylic or gouache because they aren't transparent. Depending on the type of watercolor that you have, you may be able to remove some of the color by going over it with a brush with water. Be careful not to rub it too much, so it won't injure the paper. Remember that this technique will not delete the color completely. It may be better than nothing, but it's better not to count on it and leave the light areas light in the first place. The deeper places are darker because less light can get in. This is basically the idea of shadows, the places where the light has more difficulty to reach, places under objects, places like tunnels, places that are hidden. This technique of working in layers requires patience. This process takes time, but you can see now that the rose gradually become more and more three-dimensional and realistic. The pink areas are the thickness of the petal. Even though a petal is very thin, it still has some thickness to it. The rose still need more defined shadows and details, but we are getting closer to the completion of the rose and to the end of the video. But don't worry, I didn't forget the leaves of the rose. So there will be part 2 for this video. If you don't want to miss the second part or other tutorials, you can subscribe to my channel. When I made this video, I wanted to give you all the explanations and tips that I think are important for this tutorial. Maybe if you are new to painting with watercolor, it will be easier to watch this video more than once. It takes a lot of work to make this kind of video, so I really hope that you find this tutorial fun and useful. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon. Bye bye.